Okay, so I'm working on the front of the top, and I decided that I was going to have the setup row and then free shells before it starts like branching off. So if you're making an extra large, I would recommend doing that. So do your setup row and then do row 2, row 1, row 2, and row 1 of the repeat. And then we're going to do a slightly modified row 2, which is just that we want to not have a picot in the middle here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the very middle of my work. I'm just going to work the middle of the work. Let's see, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shells on this side, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shells on this side. And this is the very middle, so I'm just going to put a stitch marker in the very middle because normally we would work a picot into the stitch, but I don't want one here because this is going to be where things kind of branch off. So for the row 2 repeat, we're just going to chain 1, turn, and it's just a regular row 1, or I'm sorry, row 2 until you get to that very middle stitch. So single crochet and the treble crochet. Bring this down a little bit. Okay, so you do a single crochet in the first stitch, and then go over to the picot and do a shell, which is just a double crochet, chain 1, then double crochet in the same spot, chain 1, and one more double crochet in the same spot. And then in this double crochet, we're going to do a picot, so single crochet, chain 3, and single crochet in the same spot. And then just repeat that until you get to the stitch marker in the it should be in the very middle of your work, and then I'll show you what to do then. Okay, so I have come to the double crochet that I put a stitch marker in because it's at the very middle of the work. And what you're simply going to do is, instead of doing a picot, just put a single crochet top of that stitch, and then move on to the next picot and put in a shell, which is your double crochet, chain 1, make sure we got the right spot, oops, double crochet in the same spot, chain 1, and one more double crochet in the same spot, and then in the next double crochet put a picot, so single crochet, chain 3, and single crochet in the same spot, and then you're just going to finish that out like you normally would a row 2. And then, sorry, I'm going to show you how we're going to do the first sleeve. Okay, so you should finish your row 2 with a single crochet in the 4th chain of that chain 7 space. Alright, now we're going to do probably the trickiest part, which is making the sleeves. So to do that, we're basically going to have 5 decreases. So we're going to cut out this shell, cut out this shell, and then cut out this shell, so that we only have these 2 left, and then these are going to be the top of the strap. So for the extra large size, we're going to do 3 decreases. So I'll show you how to do that. So we're going to start out a row 1, but then at the end of the row 1 we're going to do our decrease. So for row 1 we chain 7. I have a cat trying to get in my lap. Watson, not now, honey. It's okay, honey. Okay, so chain 7 and turn, and then we're going to work like we're doing the regular row 1 of the lace repeat. So you single crochet in the top of the middle double crochet, chain 3, put another single crochet on top of that middle double crochet, chain 3, and then double crochet in picot space, and then chain 3. Watson. And then put a picot in the middle double crochet of the shell. Gosh, I have to show you guys. Watson, you can't get in my lap right now. I have a tripod between my legs. But, okay. Watson, oh my gosh. Yeah, there's not much room. Watson, what are you doing? Oh, goodness. Come on. I'll cuddle you later. Okay, so chain 3. And double crochet in the picot space, chain 3, and in the top of the middle double crochet of the shell, put a picot, so single crochet, chain 3, single crochet. Alright, we still have 2 more picots, so the decrease is going to take place in this last picot before we get to the middle. So chain 3, double crochet in the picot space, chain 3, and in the top of the middle double crochet of the shell, put a picot, and then put another single crochet in the same stitch. Now we're at the last picot before you get to the middle of the top where we left out a picot. So to do the decrease, basically we're not going to chain, we're just going to double crochet into that picot space. Right, and then we're going to do the row 2 repeat. So chain 1, turn. It's a little difficult because the top is it's kind of heavy hanging off the table, and then I'm trying to get it up here. But anyway, so put a single crochet, or yeah, chain 1 and then single crochet at the top of that stitch, and then put a shell in the picot. So single crochet, chain 1, or sorry, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the same spot, chain 1, double crochet in the same spot, and then put a picot in the top of the double crochet, single crochet, chain 3, single crochet, And then we're just going to repeat that to the end, like you would for any row 2 of the lace part. Shell in the picot. Picot in the top of the double crochet. Shell in the picot. A picot in the top of the double crochet. And a shell in the last picot. Okay, and then put a single crochet in the 4th chain of the chain 7 space. That's this one. And that's your row 2. I'm gonna have to keep this up here. Okay, so then we're gonna do row 1 of lace again, and then we're going to do another decrease, which means that we're going to just do a double crochet into this last picot. So chain 7, and turn, and then we're doing the row 1 of the lace repeat. So after you chain 7, you go into the top of the middle double crochet of the shell, and you put a picot, oh my goodness. And then you put a shell. Oh, sorry. I'm having difficulties with trying to get this top to not fall off the table and be in focus. Okay, so chain 7, put a picot, and then that's row 1, so we chain free and put a double crochet in the picot, chain free, put a picot in the middle double crochet of the shell, chain free, single crochet, chain free, double crochet in the top in the picot. Now we only have the 1 picot left, so we're going to chain free and put a picot in the middle double crochet of the shell. And now we're at the last picot, so to do the decrease we're just going to do a double crochet into that picot. Right, now we have to do row 2 of the lace pattern again, so chain 1, turn your work, put a single crochet into the first stitch, and then put a shell into the picot. And then we're going to put a picot in the top of the double crochet. then put a shell in the next picot. Put a picot in the top of the double crochet. Put a shell in the next picot. And then put a single crochet in the 4th chain. So that would be this guy. Okay, now we have 3 shells left. And we need to do one more decrease so that we only have 2 left, and then we're going to finish off the sleeve. So we're going to do one more decrease row, which is row 1. So chain 7. And turn. And then put a picot in the middle double crochet of the shell. And then put a shell in the next picot. And then put a picot in the middle double crochet of the next shell. Right, and now we are at the last picot, so we're just going to put a double crochet to finish the decrease. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do our row 2 repeat of the lace. So chain 1 and turn. Put a single crochet in the first stitch. Put a shell in the picot. Put a picot in the top of that middle double crochet. And put a shell in the next picot. And then put a single crochet in the 4th chain. So it's this one. 4th chain of the chain 7 space. Alright, now that is it for decreasing. So now what we're going to do is repeat rows 1 and rows 2 on the sleeve until you have the same height that you have on the back of the top. So let me bring this up a bit so you can see. Okay, so you can see on the back here we got start, and then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 shells. Now over here we have the start in row, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shells. So that means we need 5 more shells, which means that we have to repeat rows 1 and 2 5 more times. So for the extra large top, you're going to repeat rows 1 and 2 5 more times, but the very last row 2 is going to be a little different. Basically, we're just going to put shells all the way across like we did on the back. So go ahead and repeat rows 1 and 2 until you have the number of shells you need, but on the last row 2, I'll just show you how we're going to finish the sleeve. And let me show you the row 1 one more time. So chain 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bring this back down. And then turn. And then we put a picot in the top of the middle double crochet of the shell. Chain 3. Put a picot, or no, I'm sorry, not picot, put a double crochet in the picot, and then chain 3, and put a picot in the middle double crochet of that shell, and then chain 3. And then we're going to do a treble crochet in the last stitch, which is the single crochet from row 2. So that's how you do the row 1 repeat for sleeve, and then you just keep doing the row 2 repeat for the lace. So again, you need to do rows 1 and 2 5 more times each, but the very last row 2 is going to be a little different, so I'll show you how to finish the sleeve. Okay, so I'm at the last repeat for the sleeve, so got our start row, and then we should have 11 shells after that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now we have to make the 11th shell, which is the last row 2, which is going to be slightly different than the other row 2s of the lace, in that we are just going to do shells in each space, so the shell in here instead of a picot. So chain 1 and turn, and then do a shell in the first picot, and then do a shell in the double crochet instead of a picot. And do a shell in the last picot. And then just do a single crochet in the 4th chain of the chain 7th space. And then that is it for that sleeve. So fasten off, just pull a loop through. Get yourself like a good 4 or 5 inches for weaving in, and cut your yarn. And just tighten that up. So that is the first sleeve. And then it should be the same height as the back of the top. There. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11 shells, and then the bottom. And it should be about 10 inches because that's how long I want my lace to be. About 10 inches. Alright, so now I am going to show you how to do the sleeve on the other side. Okay, so now we are going to do the sleeve, but on the other side. And this is again for the extra large size. So the way you're going to do this is make a slip knot with plenty of room, like 4 or 5 inches of yarn for weaving in at the end. So make a slip knot on your hook, and then go into the first single crochet at the opposite edge, and then just pull up a loop and pull through. Then we're going to chain 7. Alright, and then we're going to basically do row 1, but then we're going to do a decrease in the very last picot, kind of like we did on the other side. So go into the middle double crochet shell and make a picot. And then chain 3. And then make a double crochet in the next picot space. Chain 3. Make a picot in the middle double crochet of the shell. Chain 3. And then make a double crochet in the next picot. Chain 3. Make a picot in the top or middle double, top of the middle double crochet of the shell. Chain 3. And at this point we have 2 picot spaces left, so do a double crochet in the next picot. Chain 3. Put a picot in the top of the middle double crochet of that shell. And then we are at the last picot, so we're not going to chain 3, we're just going to double crochet into that picot, and then that makes the decrease for the second sleeve. So then these 2 are in the middle, and then we're going to go up into our sleeves. Okay, so now you're just going to do a row 2 lace repeat. So single crochet, turn, single crochet into the first stitch, and then put a shell in the picot. And then put a picot in this double crochet. And then put a shell in the next picot. And put a picot in the double crochet. And then put a shell in the next picot. Sorry, getting more yarn. put a picot in the next double crochet. Put a double crochet, or put a shell in the next picot. And then you come to the end of the row and you just put a single crochet in the 4th chain of the chain 7, which is this one. Okay, and now we're going to do the row 1 repeat again, and we're going to decrease again, which means that we're going to just put a double crochet in this last picot. So chain 7, and turn, and then put a picot in the middle double crochet of the shell. Put a shell in the next picot. Put a picot in the middle double crochet of the next shell. And we have 2 more picots left, so put a shell in the next picot. Then put a picot in the middle double crochet of the next shell. And then we are at the very last picot, so just put a double crochet in that picot. Okay, so chain 7 and turn your work, and then do a picot in the middle double crochet of that shell, and then chain 3 and do a double crochet in the picot, and then chain 3 and do a picot in the middle double crochet of the next shell. And then we're already at our last picot for this row, so we're not going to chain 3, we're just going to do a double crochet into that last picot. Okay, and now we're going to do the row 2. So chain 1 and turn your work. Do a single crochet in the first stitch. Do a shell in the picot. And then do a picot in the double crochet. And then do a shell the next picot. And then do a single crochet in the 4th chain of the chain 7 space. Okay. And now we've reduced it down to 2 shells. So now we have to finish out the sleeve again. So again, we have the starting one, and then we need 11 shells after that to get the same length. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shells, which means we need 5 more, which means we need to repeat rows 1 and 2 5 more times. But then the last row 2 is going to be a little bit different with the shells across. So go ahead and repeat rows 1 and 2. For the exercise, we're going to do it 9 more times, and I'll show you that modified row 2 one more time. Okay, so I am on the last row for the second sleeve. So I got my starting row, and then I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 shells, and I just did my row 1 repeat. So I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to do a single crochet in the first stitch. This is the row 2. And then instead of doing a picot in the double crochet, we're going to do a shell. So just do a shell in the picot. Do a shell in the double crochet. Do a shell in the last picot. And do a single crochet in the 4th chain of the chain 7, and then that is it for your sleeve. So then pull the loop through, give yourself about 4 or 5 inches to weave in the end, and cut. And that is it for the front part. So now I have the front of my shirt and the back. And then the next part will be on how to seam these together. And then I'm just gonna weave in all the weave in the ends at the very end, because you want to make sure that the top fits before you weave in all the ends, because it can be really hard to undo things once you weave in all the ends. So I will come back and show you how I'm going to seam these 2 pieces together. Okay, so here are 2 pieces of my top. So I was going for a width of about 23 inches. And might be a bit not wide. It's 22 inches. So I think it's going to stretch out a little bit when you wear it, so let's say it's close enough. And then I was going for a total length of 29 inches. We're at 29. And then the lace part was supposed to be 10 inches. And the bottom part, 19 inches. So that all looks good. Now, Watson, can you get off of it, please? So what you want to do now is seam the top. And the parts that you're going to sew together is the tops here, where the 2 straps are. So just sew this part. And then you want to sew down the sides here. And then I'm going to leave all this open for the armpit. You could sew up a little bit higher if the armpit is bigger than you want it to be. But yeah, I'm going to seam down both of these sides and across the top of the strap. So you can do that any way you like to sew your tops together. I'm going to show you the stitch I used real quick. So I'm going to get the cats off this top and then show you how I seam it together. Okay, so I'm going to sew up this strap to the back. There isn't really a right side and wrong side to these pieces, so it doesn't matter which which way it's turned. I'm gonna use this needle, which is I guess a tapestry needle with a curved tip, and I'm just gonna start with like this much string to sew the strap. It's probably more than I need, but oh well. So what I'm gonna do is just match up these shells at the top. Bring this down a little bit. So I take these shells, match them up, and then so I'm gonna go in right here, and I'm gonna go through both loops on both sides. I don't know if this is the proper way to sew a top. This is just how I do it. And then I'm gonna tie a knot. Make sure you leave enough to weave in the end. And then, making sure my sides are matched up here, I'm going to go through just both loops. I don't know, I think you can go through just the 2 loops if you want. I'm going to go through all 4 loops at the top of these stitches. And I believe I got this tangled up in here. I believe this is just called a whip stitch, the stitch I'm doing. And then go through the next 2 stitches. And don't pull it too tight, but pull it tight enough that you're not going to have a gap. Next 2. Personally, sewing things together is probably my least favorite part of making something. Just because I find sewing to be a pain, and I don't think I'm particularly good at it. But there isn't too much sewing to do, especially not on the straps. So just keep going through the tops of the 2 sides. Gosh. Almost at the end. And I'll go through the knot where we fastened off here. And then I'm going to turn and just go back through the 2 outside stitches. Just kind of make sure that it's secure. So basically gone through the outer loops of both sides. However you like to sew your pieces together, just do it that way. I don't know if this is the best way to do it. It's just how I do it. I'm not going to go all the way back to the edge. I'm going to stop here. And I just like to tie a knot just to make sure it's extra secure. And then you're going to have a whole bunch of ends to weave in. So the way I do that is I go through a couple stitches, and you want to try to split the actual yarn and go in between the fibers, because that will make your weaving in more secure. So go one way, go back another way, and then go back. You want to go back and forth at least 3 times, preferably in slightly different directions, and then your end shouldn't come out. So then you just snip off the end. And you can wait until you get to the very end of sewing. So this would be the wrong side of the sewn part, and this would be the right side of the sewn part. Now for the sides, I'm just going to sew it together with this green color because this is what I have left over from the cake. And you don't have to sew it all together with one long piece. You could sew like halfway up. I'm gonna do a pretty long piece of string so that I hopefully don't have as many ends. And what I'm gonna do is just starting at the bottom, make sure that you have your stitches lined up. And I'm just going to go in at the bottom here. Pull it through. I'm actually going to go back and do the knot later because it kind of was getting in the way. Right, and then I'm just going to make sure I go through at least 2 loops on both sides of, on both panels or both pieces of the shirt. Make sure I go through and get at least 2 loops, or, well, a total of 4 loops, but it should be 2 from each panel of the shirt. If you use the variegated yarn, the seaming isn't going to be as obvious as if you use a stripe, because obviously unless you sew each little section with a different color, it's not going to be all the same color. So yeah, I'm just going to do that all the way up the side, matching up all the stitches until I get to where we did the armpit decrease, and that's where I'm going to fasten off. And then you just want to go and weave in all of your ends. So I'll show you what we got the very end. Okay, so this is what we have after seaming everything together. So I turned it inside out. The inside, this is what the seam looks like. So you should have a seam all the way up both sides up to the armpit area, and then you should have a seam across the top just from here to here for the sleeves. And then when you turn it inside out, if you're using the variegated, you can't really see the seam because I used a solid color. Obviously we got a little bit of that peeking through here. I used variegated from the Cotton Lava cakes on this one, and as you see, you can't really see the seam because the colors are always changing. But anyway, I hope you're able to follow along. Just let me know down below if you have any questions. And I guess the most important thing to remember is that it's the length is more important to measure with a tape measure and see when you have enough rows than to try to go by like an exact row count. And then keep in mind that the bottom part is has a bit of weight to it, so it might stretch out your lace. So you just want to stretch your lace out a little bit and then measure it, so that way when you go to wear it, it doesn't stretch out and all of a sudden it's like sagging down. But yeah, I've got, with it stretched out a bit, I got 10 inches of lace, and I have 19 inches of body, for a total of 29 inches, which is what I was shooting for. And then we got about 23 inches across. So yeah, that was my first attempt at making a tutorial, and I hope you were able to follow along. And I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.